Hi, fifth graders. Today's topics are going to be on turning decimals into mixed fractions, adding decimals, subtracting decimals, and word problems. We're going to start off with turning decimals into fractions. So, the easiest part to remember about decimals to fractions is that if there is a number in front of the decimal, then that is automatically a whole number. So in the case of number 3, 2 is in front of the decimal, right? So 2 is going to be your whole number. Now we just need to worry about 0.8. So we know that 8 is in the tenths place, right? So we know that 8 is going to be over 10, just like its name, the tenths place. Now you can leave it as 8 over 10, or you can have it as 4 over 5, because we know that it can be simplified into 4 over 5 because both 8 and 10 can be divisible by 2. So you can have 2 and 8 tenths, or you can have 2 and 4 fifths. Usually your teachers will prefer the 2 and 4 fifths. So for this one, mixed numbers, it has a whole number and a fraction because mixed fractions consist of a whole number and a fraction. So once again, remember that the number in front of the decimal is your whole number, so you don't need to worry about converting that into a fraction unless it says improper fractions. Now we're going to be adding decimal numbers. So when we're adding decimals, the most important thing is the decimal places. And so you need to line them up. And I'm going to show you with number 6. Number 6 gives us 4.32. Gotta make that decimal visible. Plus 0.9. So what you need to do is make sure that the decimals match up. So we're going to put 0 below the 4. And then we're going to put a decimal. And then the 9 goes below the 3. And you don't have to, but just in case it helps you more, you can choose to put a 0 behind the 9 because there's nothing else behind it. And now we just add like we usually do. So I'm going to bring the decimal down first before we forget. And then we just add. 2 plus 0 is 2. 3 plus 9 is 12. So bring down the 2, bring up the 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. 5 plus 0 is just 5. So your answer for number 6 will be 5.22. A lot of people get this wrong because they place their decimal points incorrectly. So make sure that your decimal points always match up, like mine right here. It makes like a line, a straight line, kind of, right? It makes a straight line, and it has the same number of decimal place value, or just place values, sorry. Place values behind the decimal. Like 4.2 has 2 numbers behind the decimal, 0.9 has 2 numbers behind the decimal, and 5.22 has 2 numbers behind the decimal also. Okay, so now we're going to move on to subtracting decimal numbers. Subtracting the decimal numbers, it's the same thing but just subtracting. So once again, we need to make sure that the decimal points match up. So we got 6.7 minus 2.3. So I'm going to write down 6.7 first. And I'm going to put 2.3. Oh, and I'm sure you guys know this already, but make sure that the number on top is always the greater number when you're subtracting. If it's the other way around, if it was 2.3 minus 6.7, that would not make sense at all. So once I have the decimal points matching up, I'm going to subtract them. And then once again, I'm going to bring down the decimal point before I forget. Same place, right? All have only one number behind the decimal. So now we're going to subtract. 7 minus 3 is 4. 6 minus 2 is 4 again. So once again, when we look again at the factors or the numbers up here and the difference, we see that there's only one number behind the decimal at all costs. So the answer to number 1 will be 4.4. Oops, it's a bit too big. I'll make the decimal point visible for you guys. So when you're subtracting numbers, once again, make sure that your decimal points match up and that the number on top is always the greater number. Now, word problems. We're gonna do number 4 together. Number 4 says, Zach bought 2.2 pounds of fruit for a class party. The class ate 1.6 pounds of the fruit. How much fruit is left? So let's look at the numbers that are given to us. We see that we had a total, this is our total, of 2.2 pounds of fruit. So that's going to be our total. However, from that total, we see that 1.6 was eaten, right? So this 1.6 is what we're going to subtract from the total because we need to find out how much is left, right? So once again, I'm going to put the number, since this is a subtraction problem with decimals, I'm going to make sure that the decimals are lined up and that the total number, because it's greater than the 1.6, is going to be on top. So I'm going to put 2.2 minus 1.6. Now once again, I'm going to bring down the decimal point before I forget. And now I'm going to subtract. So 2 minus 6, that's not possible, right? So this 2 is going to turn into a 12. Oops, I almost said the answer. And in order for this 2 to turn into a 12, we needed to borrow a 10 from this 20 right here, right? So it's, or 2 right here. So this 2 turns into a 1. And now we're just going to subtract 12, or we're going to subtract 6 from 12, and that just gives us 6. Moving on, we see that it's now 1 minus 1. And we don't need to borrow anymore, and we can't either way, but we don't need to because 1 minus 1 is the same thing. So 1 and 1 is the same number I meant. So we could just subtract them and we'll get 0. So our final answer would be 0.6. But because this is a word problem, we want to write it down in terms of the problem. So we're going to need to label it. So we got 0.6, but 0.6 what? We have 0.6 pounds of fruit left. So when we're doing word problems, you need to make sure that you're labeling correctly. Because most teachers will mark you wrong if you have the right, like even if you have the right answer, it will be marked wrong if you don't label it. So you need to get into a habit of labeling. And that's all I have for you guys today. I hope this video helped you guys a bit.